I know, right? I think also.
People have been bouncing around.
I don't know. I'm using this conference thing too. Hey, don't forget as you come in, we have PDH sign-in forms up front, so make sure you sign in. And it's 8:30 right now. I'll give it a couple more minutes for people to trickle in after breakfast. Okay. Can y'all hear me good and well? Okay. So it's 8:32, 8:33. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know that a lot of people are still trickling in after breakfast. That's completely fine. Just for those of you who might have forgotten to sign in as you came in, just after the session, the sign-in sheets are out front. Just make sure you stop by on your way out, sign in, so that record of you coming in for PDHs be made. And then afterwards, we'll send you an email verifying that your attendance, as well as a hyperlink for evaluation. So, just keep that in mind. So I'm Matt Quesenberry. I'm with NCDOT Technical Services. Not to be confused with Transportation Planning Division, Technical Services Division, unit, my bad, who I'm also presenting with today. So I'm serving the role as both moderator and speaker in this presentation. So you get to watch me moderate myself. If I say anything too outrageous, use any bad language, I can really lay it down, be hard myself on it with that. Likewise, I can also complain if I forget to mention, again, that PDHs are out front. So as an audience member and speaker, I can also do that. But I'm serving in two roles here. So I started out working in Train Station Planning Division, developing CTPs. Went to the private sector for a while, developing traffic forecast for anything from Complete 540 on to I-85 out in the Charlotte, Gastonia area. Back here with Technical Services, working with Matt Clark and Terry Knauss, a good crew of folks. Have here Joe Shrippa, head of the Traffic Forecasting Group, Train Station Planning Division, Carrie Morrow, head of the Traffic Survey Group, and then Amar Pillay, a really great travel demand modeler responsible for the Metrolina regional model, one of the best there is in the state there. And so all of us will be speaking to you about accounting for travel demand through, from preliminary planning through project development. So how does this apply to you when looking at through the lens of project delivery? And so our session goals are to learn about the different types of products to assess travel demand that range from a simple traffic count to detailed traffic forecast, and to determine when a particular assessment is most appropriate based on how it will be used and where the project is during project development. And so we want to view these assessments through the lens of the project delivery network, through the PDN. So we hope you both learn something interesting and see how it can apply to you. And so what is travel demand? And this is just one of my favorite graphics here. Many of you probably seen this before, but it's mistakenly often been compared to a black box that takes in various inputs, population, household employment, and just cranks out a train station plan or a forecast or something, and you have no idea what went into it and how that occurred. Also, another of my favorite ones is just you have a county commissioner here on the left, and then just a planner over here, and just like, oh, we got another bypass, another highway, and just powerless to the mysterious black box that forced him to create a new highway. And that's not the case at all. And this also applies, I want to say this is more than just models. This applies to everything, forecast, express on traffic volumes, traffic counts. I'll explain a little more as we go along, but any sort of product the NCDOT is responsible for, we're assessing travel demand on the facility. And so when talking about travel demand, it's the number of and location of households and employment that generate trips into the transportation system. And so you account for that. These trips will in turn be distributed and assigned onto system roadways while also accounting for the mode of travel. And through this process of trip generation, trip distribution, mode choice, and assignment, we are able to develop travel demand. We're looking at the number of vehicles per given time period. And using these processes with various levels of detail, we're able to assess travel demand and right size it based on the particular situation and where we are in the project. And what I'm showing here, it's very high level. This is not a gospel definition. This is just a very high level overview. I honestly think we could probably do a 30-minute seminar on defining travel demand and how it applies in a given situation. But for purposes of presentation, this is just a high-level general overview. And so, it's not a black box. It's an iterative, collaborative effort to determine what travel demand is on a facility. It's not a siloed process, not just to throw it over the wall and see what happens downstream for the unit after me. And so what it should be is you're determining travel demand, whether it be through a forecast or an express on traffic valuation, do a traffic count, or otherwise. You coordinate with your stakeholders. You determine what the project design. In turn, that then feeds into and is a condition used to inform travel demand. So it's an iterative process, one that requires collaboration through the process as we progress through project delivery. And then NCDOT has various products used to estimate travel demand under varying assumed conditions and through various levels of detail. So we have basic level traffic counts, travel demand model, express design traffic volumes, that's the newest one that I'll be speaking on later on, and then project level traffic forecast. And with that said, I will hand it to Carrie Morrow, head of our traffic surveying group, to speak about traffic counts.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me in the back? Okay, great. All right. All right. So traffic counts. I'm with Traffic Survey Group. Not everyone knows that we have such a large staff here at NCDOT who produces our traffic counts. But we do. We do most of our traffic counts in-house, and my team performs that. So we do that at the state level. It is required of all states, so we are part of a nationwide system that does traffic monitoring. And we do it, one of the primary reasons what we do it is to meet FHWA's requirements for HPMS every year. So our big annual deadline is June 15th, which is in about a month. This is our very busy time of year. All right, so our traffic monitoring system is comprised of 3 programs. So that is our continuous counts, our coverage counts, and our project counts. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about each of these. So first of all, our continuous count program. Each of the little C's on the map that you see here represent our continuous stations. So you can kind of see they're spread out throughout North Carolina, and these are our sites that are outside of the roadway, non-intrusive forms of counting traffic, and they collect traffic 24/7 for every day of the year. So they're constantly providing us tons and tons of data, and this is very important for many reasons. So one thing a few things that we don't have right now. So we're in the process right now of doing radar link-based classification, and that's something that we're doing to meet federal requirements to have continuous vehicle classification. We are also bringing in WIM, so we're in the process now of kind of determining where those sites are going to be, and WIM is weigh in motion. There are a lot of benefits to having that, not just the weight data, from trucks, but also, for the sake of our pavement, but also so that we can have continuous class counts at those locations. And at one time, we had about 40 or so WIM sites. They're sort of a life, life. Can't think of the word I'm thinking of, but there's they don't last forever. So all of them are out of use currently, but we are trying to bring that program back. And also a new thing that we're looking at and beginning to use is video. So using AI to classify vehicles, and that's a really good, innovative sort of equipment that we're starting to bring in. Our coverage count program, so this is like the vast majority of our sites. So you can see those blue dots all over the state. We collect everywhere. We collect almost everywhere. It's many, many locations. So it's a small amount of data, but at many locations, we do 48-hour counts. Typically, our staff, puts these counters out, in the wee hours of the morning, just for safety. But these are raw counts. They're just, they're axle based. I think if you've been able to stop by the TPD table, we have some, the hoses. It's a very simple type of equipment that we use, but it's still the best way to do it. And of course, because they're raw counts, we have to seasonally factor those in order to get good statistics out of them. And then the final program is for projects. So we do this for various reasons. Depending on, most of our project counts that we do are requested to us from within. We are part of Transportation Planning Division, and usually they're requested from within Transportation Planning Division. It's usually for a CTP or a model update, which our folks in our traffic forecast, our folks are going to talk a little bit more about in this presentation. Okay, so just to kind of give you some numbers, I think this 129 might be off. That was a few months old, but I think we're in the 130s. So that's about how many continuous stations we have. About 3,500 vehicle classification stations, and those are still done short term. They're done a little bit differently than our volume counts, but about 3,500. Those are done on a 3-year cycle. about 51,000 volume stations. So again, that's the many points, and those are done on a very complicated cycle. Depends on what type of road it is. But in total, we have 55,000 traffic monitoring sites in North Carolina. So quite a few sites, quite a lot of data that we collect. So what are most people looking for when they're looking for traffic data? They're looking, primarily they're looking for AADTs. Those are used for a number of things. I'm sure many of the people in this room use our AADTs for various reasons. Some of our customers are particularly looking for our truck volumes in certain locations. And then some of our customers are looking particularly for the traffic segments for our accounts. Okay, so AADT, I always have to remind every audience that I talk to that, when we give out traffic counts, we're not talking about raw counts. It is a statistic. So an AADT, represents the average over a whole year. It's a daily volume, but represents, so if we collect, today, if we're collecting today on a Wednesday in May, we're gonna apply factors that even that out and make it representative of the entire year, 2023. So it is an estimate. It's not going to be the exact raw count that we collect. And there are a lot of resources that dictate, how we do that and certain standards we have to meet. Our traffic monitoring guide is sort of our Bible that we use. And I'm not going to get too into the weeds on how we do it, but as I talked about, we do apply factors. There's an axle factor. There's a seasonal factor, which are important to make sure that we're accounting for all types of traffic throughout the year. And we have a staff that's dedicated to analysis of the data to make sure that we're, looking at it both spatially and temporally. Okay, I mentioned some of the different cycles. So on an annual basis, we collect our primary routes. Those are going to be our routes that we collect on every single year. And then essentially we have an even and odd year cycle for our urban areas. So I'm not going to read them all out to you, but hopefully if you're in one of these urban areas, you know if you're an even year cycle or if you're an odd year cycle. If you don't know that, you can always come to our traffic survey website, and it lists those there. It's very important for our customers to know when their urban areas are collected. That way, we're not getting a lot of requests, for us to do counts, on a year that we don't typically do it. Okay, so when is this initiated in project development? I guess, as it says, it could be really any time. There's so many uses for our traffic data. But I tend to think of us as being sort of the first step in, TBD is sort of at the beginning of the transportation process, and we're even like before that. we have to get the data. We have a lot of consumers of our data. Common situations, as I said, we primarily get our traffic count requests from within TPD when there are model updates and traffic forecasts. For traffic forecasts, we typically work with our folks in mobility and safety, and they have a contract that they manage that has several traffic counting vendors. So that is usually not done by our in-house by our staff. And some innovative features under development. So, there are a lot of places that you can find our traffic data that people are aware of. Our webpage, of course. AJOL, I think, is probably one of the most common places that people look for our traffic counts. It's very user-friendly. It's very visual, easy to use. It's been around for a long time. People are aware of it. In 2020, we developed the EBS dashboard. So for those of you that are, NCDOT employees, the same place where you go to do your timesheet, there's a performance dashboard, and we have a tile under the mobility page for that. So we also have that. That was something we developed in 2020 because the secretary asked us to. So because he was very interested in seeing, traffic pickup, but day by day. So, and then the final thing I'll talk about real quick is that people are a little less aware of is our traffic count database system. So we call it TCDS. We have to have an acronym. And this is sort of what the interface looks like. And there's the web page. I'm happy to provide that to anyone if you want to email me. But there is no login required. You can use it as a public user. There also is like a kind of a elevated level of user that we can designate certain people as if you're looking for more, if you're like a really like a power user of the data, we can do that for you. But it provides a ton of information, and I'll just give you some of the customer reports that, these are things that our customers ask a lot of us. So some of the reports include, our annual statistics, our seasonal and axle factor groups, short-term class, like average daily statistics, hourly distributions, our top 25 AADTs. That's something that we get a request for. So, just some of those typical requests that we get a lot, we went ahead and put those as custom reports. That way you guys, if you have a question or you want any of those statistics, you can go in and find it yourself. So. And I believe that's it. All right, thank you.
And Amar, well, we're not, Amar's.
That's it for me, sorry.
So, good morning. Can you hear me at the back? Yeah. Again, my name is Amar Pillai. I'm with the Model Research and Development Group at the Transportation Planning Division. And our group maintains and manages all the different travel demand models in the state. And for this part, I'll give you a brief overview of what we do in modeling and where it's used and the state of affairs of modeling in North Carolina. So we heard about traffic counts. And typically, if using traffic counts, we have an idea of what's going on the ground today. But if we want to have a gauge of what's going to happen in the future, because that's what's required for transportation planning or design, traffic counts does not completely cover it. So for that, what do we do? So typically in transportation planning, there are two ways to do it. One is a trend line analysis, and as the name suggests, we have historical counts, and we can project that to the future, and we get a forecast number. However, if we want to do any kind of scenario testing, like what would happen if a 500-home subdivision is coming to town? How is that going to affect the transportation system? Or a big box store is coming right next to the busiest intersection in town. How is that going to affect the intersection operation? Or we're widening Road A, which is parallel to Road B. How is that going to impact the operation of Road B? To answer these kind of questions, the trendline analysis does not do it. So in this case, we use something called the travel demand model. So what is a travel demand model? It's a model that translates land use into demand on the transportation numbers. So the scenarios I spoke about earlier about development coming in and impacts on the transportation system or any kind of change to the transportation system and how it affects that, we do through the use of travel demand models. And there are many different types of travel demand models, but the most common one is known as the four-step model. I'd say 95 to 98% of all the models are either based on the four-step model or directly the four-step model. And as the name suggests, the four-step model, it has 4 steps: trip generation, trip distribution, mode choice, and assignment. And each of these steps answers a very specific question about the trip-making characteristic about that region. Both how many trips will be made, where do the trips go to, how will they get there, and what routes are taken. And once we answer these 4 questions, we get some model outputs, which can be used in the decision-making process. So I'll briefly go through each step of the 4-step process. So the first one is known as trip generation. So in an area, how many trips will be made? And the way we do that is we quantify all the land use information. So it's basically all the household data and the non-household data. And non-household data includes anything where people have a reason to travel. So it could be an office, could be a factory, could be a school, could be the beach, anything. And we have trip rates based on surveys and national studies, which we apply to them. And we break them down by trip types. So it can be a work trip, a school trip, a shopping trip. But the question that's not answered here is, where does the trip end at? So, for example, if I'm living in a subdivision and I have a shopping, and the model predicts a shopping trip for groceries, I'm not sure if I'm going to go to the Harris Teeter in my neighborhood, or am I going to the Super Walmart 5 miles down the street? So that's answered in the next step, which is known as trip distribution. Where do the trips go to? And we do trip distribution through a process known as gravity model. And as the name suggests, it's based on Newton's theory of gravity. The bigger you are and the closer you are, the harder you track. So going back to the example of the neighborhood Harris Teeter or Super Walmart. So typically, when you think about a typical household, I would probably do all my weekend shopping at the Super Walmart, which is 5 miles away. But if I'm running out of milk in the morning, or running out of bread in the morning, or have some ingredient missing for dinner, I would make more trips to the Harris Teeter. So in terms of sheer numbers, I might make more trips to the Harris Teeter, but I will end up going to the Super Walmart. Now, if you flip that example, I'm living right next to the Super Walmart, and Harris Teeter is 5 miles away. Chances are I'll never go to the Harris Teeter 5 miles down the street. I'll go to the Super Walmart. So this is size and distance playing a role in your decision-making process as far as where you want to go. The next step is known as mode choice. So how do I get there? I can walk, I can bike, I can drive, take a bus. So typically for most areas, we live in an auto-centric society. So for small areas, typically we take this step out and the 4-step model becomes a 3-step model. But there are places where it's relevant. So when you think about it, a typical case, if you want to go to a certain destination, you hop in your car, drive to your destination, park in the nearest parking spot, and then walk over to your destination. That seems convenient. Taking a bus seems like a pain because you don't know what the frequency of the bus is. You have to walk to a bus stand and wait for the bus. All that seems like a hassle. But think of, suppose you're living in New York City and you have to go to uptown New York. You have to take your car, battle through all that traffic, find an hour finding a parking spot, and finally you find one for $40 an hour. And suddenly the bus seems like a very convenient option. So it has its place. So typically for the larger areas, we have an explicit mode choice component, but for the smaller ones, we exclude that for pragmatic reasons. And the last step is known as trip assignment. How do we get there? So I'll explain this through a simple example. So imagine we're living in the middle of nowhere, and there are 2 subdivisions popping up. One is where all the homes are, and the other is where all the jobs are. And there are 3,000 trips predicted to go from the homes to the jobs. And there are 2 ways to get there. One is a freeway with a speed of 65 miles per hour and capacity of 2,000. Another one is an arterial on the south with a speed of 45 miles per hour and capacity 1,000. So imagine this is day one. All the travelers are thinking, there's a freeway to the north, 65 miles per hour. That'll get me to my destination much faster. So everybody takes the freeway. All the 3,000 trips go on there. But the freeway has a capacity of only 2,000. So a lot of honking, frustration. So now day 2. Part of the drivers thinks that, there's an empty arterial to the south. Let me go there. So about 1,250 drives to the south, but the arterial has a capacity of only 1,000. So again, more frustration. Day 3, the arterial people think, okay, let me try the freeway again. And this goes back and forth till the whole system comes to an equilibrium. And this is how assignment happens in real life. If you have a new street opening in your neighborhood, it takes a few weeks for things to stabilize. If you have like a major facility like an interchange on a freeway, that takes several years to come to an equilibrium, or maybe never, because things are always transitioning. So this is traffic assignment. And after the 4 steps of the model are complete, we get certain model outputs. So typical model outputs are volumes, congestion speed, volume to capacity ratio, travel time, vehicle miles travel, vehicle hours travel, and we use these numbers for decision-making process. So here's a simple example. So imagine there's a road, John Doe Boulevard, and it's a principal arterial with a capacity of 12,000 and speed of 50 miles per hour. And I get traffic count data from Kerry's group, and this is what it shows me. The volume is 11,000. Volume to capacity ratio is 0.85, and congested speed is 35 miles per hour. So it's a busy road, but things are still functioning all right, and no problems as of today. I do a model run, and I get model projections from my travel demand model, and this is what it looks like in 2055. The volume is 15,000. Volume to capacity ratio is 1.25, and congested speed is 25 miles per hour. So clearly, in the future we would have to do something over there. So what do we do? And this is the step where it spurs a discussion. It could be road widening, it could be intersection improvement, it could be access management, or in some cases we don't want to do anything because this could be in a place where we desire congestion, like a downtown. But we always have to be careful how we use model data because it's based on a lot of broad assumptions. Three major ones being we can predict where growth is happening correctly. The second one is external factors don't affect us. And the third one is human beings make rational decisions. So we never get our growth projections right because in varying degrees, some yes, some no. But it's always hard to pinpoint. I mean, most of us have no idea what we're going to eat for breakfast in a week, so let alone where growth is going to happen. External factors don't affect us. We have no idea when a recession is coming, when a pandemic is going to hit us, if oil touches $200 a barrel. These are unknowns, and these do affect our transportation decisions. And lastly, humans make rational decisions. Once a famous wealthy psychiatrist was asked, how he made his wealth. And he said, it's through my patients. Most of them are psychotics or neurotics. Psychotics build castles in the air, neurotics live in them, and I charge rent for it. It's easy money. But and the point is, human beings are predictably irrational, and we're making an assumption antithetical to that. So the other reason why we should be careful about using the model is, do we desire precision or accuracy? I mean, that's kind of sounds synonymous, but there's a subtle difference. Accuracy means how the model predicts to actual data on the ground, so traffic counts. Precision means how it predicts traffic flows relative to each other. So the traffic demand model is a macro model. So we look at the holistic picture and not at the minutia, so no fine-tuning. So always look at the big picture and not look for specific information on a link. And this is the reason why model output is never used in a forecast. It is used in a forecast, but never used as the forecast. So how do we use a model? We use it for scenario testing, with different transportation planning purposes. We use it for prioritization, especially the prioritization that goes to the spot office. We use it in traffic forecasting and not as the traffic forecast. And we can also use it to understand traffic shifts. Like if we widen one road, how's the traffic going to shift? Or if we add a new bus lane or a light rail, and how is that going to affect the transportation system? How the model should not be used is looking for fine-tuned details and looking at black swan events or things that are out of our control: recession, pandemic, price of oil, things like that. So in the state of North Carolina, we have multiple different models in varying sizes and geographies. It ranges from the statewide model, which covers the entire state, to regional models, which covers several MPOs, to MPO models, which can cover one or more counties, and small area models, which can be a county or small urban areas. And this shows the geographic coverage of all the different travel demand models in the state. And you can see that anything that's colored, that's where we have model coverage. Anything that's white, that's a place where we don't have model coverage. So it's a lot of the rural areas. And if one of our rural partners come over to us and says, we want to do some analysis, or we want to do a CTP or something like that, we would have to request them to wait for 9 to 16 months because that's typically how long it takes for the model to develop, so we can do a study in their area. So to address this situation, the planning division is embarking on building regional models. So we divided the whole state into 17 regions, and we're building travel demand models for each state. So this is what it looks like. The advantage of this is, we have a standalone model for each region whenever we want. We can produce data at the county level on an annual basis. Also, in the development of this process, we are including scenario testing tools for connected and automated vehicles, and we use a lot of big data, which is the in thing these days, for the model development. And at this point, we are developing Regions 1, which is on the extreme west, and Region 17, and we anticipate the development of the others over the next several years. So when is it initiated in project development? So typically, it's requested through a CTP or when MPOs have a LRTP, the long range transportation plan. That's when it triggers the development or update of a model. and then it's subsequently used in other parts of project development. With that, thank you.
Thanks, Mar. And so I'm going to talk about express design traffic volumes. And just going back to Amar's slide here, he's showing up here early on in stage one, even pre-stage one, the long-range transportation planning process. Express design traffic valuation, which is comprised of express design traffic volumes and express design traffic analysis, is also in stage one. And so it moves a little further down in the project delivery process. And the output that Amar was talking about, the feeds traffic forecast, also informs express design traffic volumes, which is the newest product on the scene, so to speak. It's very new. We've just gotten through 2 different piloting phases, and it's continuing to evolve, but it's producing some good, encouraging results so far, and I look forward to it further helping us out in the future. So, express design traffic evaluation. I'll make sure I get the acronyms correct, because we love some good acronyms. I've already heard some good ones already in this presentation. So Express Design Traffic Evaluation, EDTE, is both a product, it's also a process that accounts for the Express Design Traffic Volume, EDTV, and Express Design Traffic Analysis, EDTA. And so typically, for an express design traffic evaluation, it can be completed within 3 months. Generally takes 10 to 20 man days of effort, and based on these constraints of time and effort, it's a level analysis. It's scaled back from what occurs later on for a project level forecast or a full capacity analysis. However, it's shown to be effective in making sure designs are in the right ballpark early on in this stage one process prior to prioritization and programming. And so when looking at the express design traffic volume, the EDTV, utilizes a simplified volume development and forecasting methods to determine design year traffic volumes. And this includes daily and peak hour traffic volumes, as well as it also includes peak hour intersection turn volumes. And then express design traffic analysis utilizes a simplified analysis method to obtain preliminary assessment of traffic operations to determine the feasibility of proposed designs. So this includes an analysis of recommended lane geometrics, storage links, design configurations for selected build alternatives and alignments. And again, this is a simplified version of what occurs later on for a full capacity analysis, but it's tailored to be developed during an express design early on in the process to answer the questions you need to answer before the project moves too far along and you have a project that's over-designed or under-designed later on. And so, I've touched on a little bit already, but the purpose, it's appropriate level analysis, evaluate cost effectiveness of projects, provide for better designs of cost estimates. Making sure we get those cost estimates, as y'all know, is very important and a major focus point of the department nowadays. And so we want to be being part of the solution on that. And so, as well as informing decision makers, determine what alignments are needed for these projects. And so I also want to convey that, again, I set you up with the acronyms. Right here I say EDTE purpose. If you see me switching back and forth between EDTE and EDTV, I'm trying to convey the benefit of this overall process, but also the individual product of the simplified version of a project level forecast, the express design volume. And Joe will come talk about more in depth project level forecast here in a few minutes. And so why is it important? Why do we feel the effort to have to add this? We've had express designs occurring prior to express design traffic evaluation. Why did we need to do the express design traffic evaluation? And so it helps evaluate if the design of project will operate at a level consistent with what your project goals are. You got to stay true to original intent and focus of the project. And so by making sure traffic is an important component of that, we're able to stay true to that. And so it produces greater certainty in your project cost prior to prioritization and programming. reduces likelihood of cost escalation due to expansion of project scope that could occur if you're not staying true to your project goals. You can screen or eliminate design alternatives during this process, and you can identify projects that are over or under designed early on, and not wait until you're too late into stage 2 or stage 3, and could be too far gone. And so, as I mentioned, this is a newer process, and so prior to the EDTE, I'd say it was more of a linear approach to incorporating a traffic forecast, traffic analysis into project design. The level of analysis did not align with the current schedule for an express design or project delivery, and so it's kind of that traditional silo approach. You're just throwing it over the wall where you have the project design going in traffic volumes, going in traffic analysis. And it's not to say that everything was done siloed, it's just saying that it wasn't right-sized to what was needed. And so, yeah, the old process in the project delivery network, we did not have the process here. We had just project level forecast and capacity analysis early on in stage 1. So the new process, it's an integrated approach, incorporates full EDTV and EDTA into project design, and it's providing for that extra level of coordination. It's more than just a product. It's providing these junctions, these stopping points to communicate between designers and your traffic engineers. And so it's a work in progress, but it's really shown some good benefits so far as we improve these touch points and get better coordination in the process. And so, yeah, as I mentioned earlier on, this is the latest version of the Project Delivery Network. I showed an older version. This is a newer version here, and we have the express design, traffic volume, and express design traffic analysis occurring here early on stage 1. Important thing is occurs for prioritization programming, and then you have your project level forecast occur down here, and towards the end of stage 1, going into stage 2, and then capacity analysis in stage 2. And so just want to go back, this earlier slide I showed, so just looking at the project delivery network, I can't emphasize enough just the importance of producing greater certainty in your project cost during prioritization and programming. That is what we're working towards to improve that, and being a part of the overall express design development to be a part of that. And identifying projects that are over or under design early. If there's anything I want you to take away just in terms of importance of this, it's those 2 points in terms of why this is an important process. But when should EDTVs not be used? And so there's various projects. I'm sure you'll have your anecdotes of those projects where everything can blow up on you and stuff, or the overly complex projects and stuff. And there's projects where model runs are needed to compare different alternatives. So Amar's done a great job of emphasizing the importance of going through the travel demand model process. And for a typical EDTV, you want to, the importance is right sizing, I mentioned. So you want to make sure you can go through quickly and get a few travel demand models run for a typical project and evaluate the difference in those runs and outputs quickly. There's certain projects where maybe you need to do multiple model runs to evaluate different land use scenarios, different very complex alternatives. Maybe it's bypassed, you have 8 different alternatives, something like that. That's not conducive to the right sizing nature of what we're looking at here for an express design traffic volume. And so that can especially be true for new location facilities. And so there's situations where even in stage 1, we would still want to do a full level project level forecast, and we would want to make sure we work well with whether it be Amar or other travel demand modelers to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to fully give a full evaluation of this project. And so also I'd say one of the benefits of a project level forecast, and Joe can touch on this more, is just the extensive coordination that's needed of local planners and officials. And it's not to say that there isn't coordination expressed on traffic volume. It's just to say that it's a benefit the project will forecast is that extensive effort and outreach that goes into that. And for express design traffic volume, it's again set for more of that typical project where you wouldn't go through the full due diligence to have time for that coordination and then make adjustments to say your travel demand model as a result of that. And so that's when you would not want to use an express design traffic volume. And so far, we've completed 128 projects as part of this pilot study. And this pilot has included projects from the 2020 and 2029 STIP. And these projects were completed between January 2022 and February 2023. And we've used this to determine if proposed design was adequate. And so far, we've been able to evaluate and assess that 7 projects were over-designed, 57 projects were adequately designed, and 64 projects under-designed when reviewing the results. And this has been a great exercise and great process to go through that spurred meetings, some of which actually even ongoing between project teams for projects that are over under designed, so we can have these conversations again early on in the process before you go further along. And so, yeah, for phase 1 and 2, the pilot study, that I just covered on the previous slide. But just looking ahead, we have other phases on the horizon. We have phase 3 for non-committed STIP projects. They're planned to be completed between between spring 2023, already past April, and summer 2024. Phase 4 non-STIP projects, phase 5 candidate projects. There's a lot of projects. If you look at some of these numbers here for phase 3, about 150, phase 4, 1,000 plus potential projects, phase 5 candidate projects for P8. So there's a lot of projects on the horizon that we intend to be bringing through this express design traffic evaluation process. So more of the reason why the importance of just making sure that we're communicating well even here in the session to make you aware of what's on the horizon here, as you'll be hearing more about this going forward. And that also important just to note that due to we've established these phased priorities to ensure projects closest to being constructed are given the appropriate amount of attention. So that's why we have these phases there. It's not that I don't want you to have to memorize this, but that's the gist of why we have these phases set up, is just so that we can give the appropriate projects the appropriate attention at the right time. And so for future implementation, once the EDT process finishes analyzing previously developed express designs, the process will become more collaborative among the project team, including designers and traffic engineers, with these elements occurring simultaneously. So the process is still evolving as we've transitioned out of the pilot phase, and it will only get better as we get into a place where express design traffic evaluations can be developed simultaneously or in parallel with the express design process. And so the more that we can get typical design work done with touch points occurring at the same time as what traffic engineers are doing, the better. The more we can improve that communication and coordination. And so it will provide for better decision-making and collaboration with stakeholders through providing traffic operations throughout development and design and prioritization. And so with that, I'll hand off to Joe Sherba.
Thank you, Matt. I've got my presentation notes here, kind of old school. So if you all want to gather close, I'll just hold these. Or can I use this? Well, thank you. As Matt said, I'm Joe Schripp. I'm the Traffic Forecasting Group Supervisor with the Transportation Planning Division. And now I understand why we use acronyms so much. It's just such a mouthful to say all that kind of stuff. But, All right, just the arrow key. Okay, now you've seen this chart earlier. In fact, you've seen it a few times. We talked about where traffic counts, where traffic forecasting, EDTVs occur in project development. And forecasting occurs right there in stage one. We rely a lot on, obviously, our traffic counts, our AEDT information that we get from Carrie's group and others, as well as modeling information. So those kind of provide the foundation for us as we develop our traffic forecasts. All right, so what is traffic forecasting? I'm sure most of you have heard about Wikipedia. It seems that everyone references it when they want to get some quick info on a particular topic. So Wikipedia defines traffic forecasting as, well, it doesn't. I couldn't find an entry for traffic forecasting, but there is an entry for transportation forecasting. And that's defined as the attempt of estimating the number of vehicles or people that will use a specific transportation facility in the future. I like the word attempt in there and also estimate in there, since we're trying to project something into the future. And like Travis Marshall likes to say all the time, if we knew how to project an exact number, then give me next week's lottery numbers. But we don't do that. They're estimates. So what is traffic forecasting? Project-level traffic forecasts estimate future traffic volumes for defined highway projects. Okay, that's similar to Wiki's definition, but it's a little bit more than that. It assesses the transportation performance under different assumptions about supply and demand. We typically look to a 20 to 30 year horizon. That should say year, not here. But it's a 20 to 30 year planning horizon. Projected level traffic forecasts are key inputs into project design studies, roadway and intersection design, pavement design, and so forth, because they lead to construction of transportation improvements and provide the foundation for developing those improvements. We also prepare traffic estimates which provide a little bit less of a deep dive. Estimates rely on existing data. We usually don't need to take traffic counts, go collect traffic counts for those. We use what's available and provide, I don't want to say it's a down and dirty number, but it's less, I think, robust than a fully formed traffic forecast. Okay, so why is it important? Why is traffic forecasting important? Well, there are federal requirements that we need to meet. There's a code 23 USC 109 requires us to provide a facility that will adequately serve the existing and planned future traffic of the highway in a manner that is conducive to safety, durability, and economy of maintenance. So there are federal requirements, federal laws that tell us that we need to provide a forecast as we're developing a project. We have, furthermore, federal guidelines note that traffic forecasting is required for air quality analysis, major investment projects and highway design projects undertaken by the federal government. And to assist us with preparing forecasts, NCHRP publishes guidelines that detail best practices. How are traffic forecasts used? Well, they are the foundation for determining project purpose and need. You need to know what the traffic volume is in a particular roadway or particular corridor, particular intersection, whatever it is you're studying, to determine if there's a need for improvement. If you say, we have congestion, but there's only 400 vehicles a day that takes, uses this particular road, then there really isn't a need for it. So forecasts help to determine that. Forecasts are essential in evaluating the performance of project alternatives. you want to build a bypass around a town, say, a forecast can help you, should help you determine, is this feasible? Are people going to take that bypass? Is it going to alleviate congestion on the road that you're bypassing, and so on? And determines the quality, the quantity and location of traffic volumes to inform roadway design, work zone traffic control, and structures design. Like I said, for instance, the bypass, the trip generation or the trip assignment that Amar mentioned in modeling, where it sends trips via one road or another, the forecast will help you determine that, how much of that traffic is shifting. Who uses traffic forecasts? Well, pretty much everyone. Anybody can ask for a forecast. They're available for literally thousands of projects that we've done here in North Carolina. Anyone with a roadway project or looking for a cost estimate for a roadway project. Anyone submitting a project for prioritization uses traffic forecasts. City and county and state governments. For instance, MPOs and RPOs, they all request traffic forecasts and use those products. And of course, NCDOT divisions and units. Our biggest customers are feasibility studies unit, quarter development unit, roadway design, structure management unit. I should include like a PMSU project management unit as well in there. Okay, so what's included in a traffic forecast? Well, the first step is to collect, review, and process data. AADT, for the past 10 to 20 years, pre-existing traffic counts, previous traffic forecasts, land use plans, regional transportation plans, demographic data. We talk with local planners and engineers, and of course on-site field investigation. These are all activities that we do when we're developing a project forecast. Matt mentioned talking to the local planners and the local engineers with EDTE forecasts. That's done to some extent. You need to talk to the local folks, but it's very critical in project level forecasting. The planners and engineers in the area live there for the most part. They know their area very well for the most part, and we can get a lot of very good information about what's going on in the town, in the county, in their project area. So it's very critical, and we always make it one of our key points is to talk to the local planners, the local engineers, and also the division engineers. Even when the division is requesting a forecast from us, we will talk with them and get their take on what's going on in the region. Determine relevant trends in the historic data. We have we have a tool that we use. It's called the TFU, the Traffic Forecasting Utility, that helps us with this. It helps us evaluate historic AADT. The tool looks at data. We have data going back, I don't know, since the horse and buggy era probably. But we usually go back 10 to 20 years and look at what the historical trend is. We have a tool that kind of helps us analyze those trends. Utilize local travel demand model. Travel demand model is an incredibly useful tool that we use for estimating growth. And like Matt said, and Amar may have said this as well, is we never take the output that comes from a travel model and say this is what the volume on the road is going to be. But the model is very good. We use the very latest land use plans, the latest MTP, the latest CTPs, and land use plans in order to develop our forecasts. So the model is up to date. It's data that's being driven by the local community, the local planners. They know their area. They supply information on, households, population, employment, and that sort of thing. So we use that model, and we generate growth from the model. We see what the growth is in a particular area. Then we apply that growth to our historical counts, to our AADT. We'll have an AADT for the existing year, and then we apply that growth to that. So we do use them in that way. Develop base year no-build forecasts. These are primarily developed with existing traffic count data, includes things like AADT, intersection turning movement counts, peak hour factors, your Ks and your Ds, and truck percentages. We also develop a future year no-build forecast without the project. What we do is we apply the model or historic AADT if a model is not available in a project area to the base year no-build volumes. And we review and adjust those volumes based on future land use changes. And then we balance everything to make sure we have a reasonable traffic network. And then we develop our build forecasts. We apply model diversion rates to the no-build volumes, again, utilizing model data to see how we'll run the model without the project in place, and then run it with the project, see what the changes are, what the differences are, and look to see what the resulting traffic flow is going to be in your project area. And then finally, we prepare a cover letter, volume diagrams, and traffic forecast report that documents the whole process. All right, so what data do we collect and who collects it? Well, we identify the locations where we're going to need data, and then we request it from our traffic survey group, Carrie's group, or sometimes we go to the mobility and safety unit to get traffic counts collected. I'm sure many of you have received data from those two sources. So we have our project location and have identified specific locations where we need traffic data. So for example, there we go. Now, hopefully we don't send people out there to put road tubes down in a situation like this. In fact, I don't think there is a situation like this in North Carolina. I think this was a photo of someplace out in California, probably the LA area. But we do ask them to go and take the counts, and they determine the best way to take the count, whether it's road tubes, not here, whether it's video, some of the new equipment that we're developing, and we take it there. So an example of project is for data collection here, we have a couple of forecast interchanges. Those are the red circles there. We need to have information about what's going on at those interchanges so that we can design the proper roadway ramp system, whatever we need to do. And what we'll do is we'll take intersection counts, turning movement counts at several locations along that corridor. Those are the green. Do they show up here? Yeah, those are the green dots. In this particular example. We'll take intersection counts, usually 13-hour turning movement counts that we then convert to AADT using factors. And we also have, I don't know if they show up, I guess they show up. The purple triangles are AADT locations where we want AADT estimates. And we'll go through that process and collect that. Thank you. So then we convert these to AADT, and I won't discuss talk about AADT. Carrie defined AADT pretty well. All right, other things we collect are peak hour design factors, such as your K factor. That's the proportion of the AADT that occurs during the design hour. They're typically between 7 and 12%. 7% is excuse me, kind of a steady stream of traffic throughout the day. An example is I-85 west of Charlotte. It's pretty steady. 12% factor, it's usually neighborhood entrance or an employer entrance or shopping entrance. That's about 12%. And we also look at the peak hour directional split of traffic, otherwise known as the D factor. And that's the percentage of total two-way traffic, total two-way peak hour traffic that occurs in the dominantly traveled direction. Examples, they range from 55 to 70%. And that's a ballpark. Some are more, some are a little less. The 55% example is I-40 near North Carolina 54, Chapel Hill Road. That's a weak dominant direction. 65% where you have a predominant direction, like on I-87 and US 64, would have a higher percentage. We also collect or use truck information. When we ask our traffic counters to provide us data, we ask for truck data. This is the Federal Highway. You probably can't read that from where you are, but this is the Federal Highway Vehicle Classification System. It has 13, I believe. No, yeah, 13 classifications. We don't ask for these broken out that much. We group some of them together, like motorcycles and cars, our autos, we group things like that. But we have heavy trucks, heavy truck percentages. Well, we talked about this one already. Okay, some common situations where a forecast is requested. We prepare preliminary cost estimates for use in the development of the STIP. We identify purpose and need for a highway project. Prepare preliminary designs. We evaluate alternative project designs. This is a good what-if where we're looking at several alternatives. We run the model for all the alternatives, compare and prepare a forecast for that. Design roadway construction plans. That's pretty obvious or self-evident. Design the type of pavement to be used for roadway improvements. What part of the data we collect is heavy truck percentages. If a road has significant amount of heavy trucks, they'll need to know what pavement to use that can withhold that kind of bombardment, I guess, by the vehicles. We analyze capacity of roadway facilities and design traffic improvements. Our group doesn't do that, but we prepare the numbers, and then traffic operations group does that. And preparing bridge construction plans and maintenance on minor roadway improvement decisions. Okay, when should a forecast not be requested? Traffic forecasting group may determine that a new or updated forecast is not needed. For the first one, this applies to bridge replacement projects only. If the ADT on the road is less than 4,000, we probably don't need a forecast. The bridge design engineer, they probably have a minimum set of plans that will handle anything up to that or more. And if there's a previous forecast for the project is judged to be valid for current needs, we'll use that previous forecast. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. And information from a traffic forecast for a geographically related project is available. So there may be a forecast that's not particular to your project, but there's a close by one that forecast was done that got ADT volumes and looked at in your area too. We will use that as well. And finally, innovative features under development. We are incorporating peak hour turns in our project level forecast. To date, we have been providing ADT and daily turns at intersections. I never really understood the usefulness of daily turns, but there is a use for them. But we are now starting to look at or developing peak hour turns for our intersections. We are updating our forecasting tool. I mentioned the traffic forecast utility That was one of the tools that we are upgrading. And the new Express Design traffic estimating tools that are coming out, we are incorporating those in project forecasting. We're tossing about the idea of maybe doing an EDTV along with our project forecasts as well, because it's a short thing, a short amount of time to do those compared to the project level forecast. And I think that's it. Yep. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Joe. So yeah, in summary, there's a broad spectrum. There's a broad spectrum of products available to assess travel demand, range from a simple traffic count to detailed forecasts. Always be sure to determine what's appropriate based on how it will be used and where it is in project development. We're really trying to right-size the level of analysis or forecasting that's needed to provide effective benefit cost solutions during the project delivery network. And there's a whole host of people involved in this process. Travis Marshall right here, I've listed as well, Deputy Director of Transportation Plan Division, everyone who just spoke, Derek Lewis with Feasibility Studies Unit, Peter Chinkansky from Patriot, I see back there, Joe Hummer as well. So we have a few minutes for questions. Are there any questions? Yes.
I know that there's a lot of factors, but when you're determining if a project is under or over designed, what NOE do you really rely on?
That's a very good question, and I think that's a question that I'd be glad to talk offline with you and get Peter Chinkansky involved in that. Just I want, with only a couple minutes left, I want to do that one justice for answering that question for you. Yes. Thanks. Yes.
With the 17 traffic demand models that are being developed, what kind of overlap would be between each division?
That's a great question.
Right. So none. So each model is pretty much its own standalone piece, and the adjoining one would be a separate model. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, did I see another hand? I think you were next.
Your slides you had for second bullet that EDTV should not be used for projects which require quite a considerable amount of coordination with local.
Mm-hmm.
At one time, we were told that it shouldn't be used for NEPA as well. So for smaller projects, has that changed for projects like bridge projects or
Each project is different, and so I don't want to prescribe something with a broad stroke for all projects. Because one thing is with playing catch up with the EDT process is it's not all happening perfectly as it should in the project delivery network. We're trying to catch up to get to where it should go, kind of this high level ballpark estimate, and then go to project level forecast. So purpose and need could vary by any project, but I'd say it really just depends. Yeah, maybe for a simpler project, discuss with your discuss feasibility studies unit, discuss with TPD, determine if it has enough information to get purpose and need there. If not, then look at your usual typical means with project level forecast. Yeah.
in the past, I found it useful for actually coordinating with locals.
Yes.
But not to replace the traffic analysis. You know, at some point where you're trying to determine whether the design is feasible or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, needs to be reduced or
Yes.
improved, you know, that coupled with all the other traffic innovations we have, I think we have used that for projects that have
Yeah, absolutely. It has been a great springboard for coordination with locals. And I was trying to thread a needle, so to speak, when covering that slide, in the sense that there is that coordination that takes place, and that is an important component of it. But I don't know if you've seen a full project level traffic forecast report before, but they have a very regimented process. They're very thorough in terms of doing that due diligence with the locals, and especially when you start throwing in other factors into a situation with many alternatives or complexities with land uses. That's when you want to begin be like, okay, EDTV is not going to cover this from a coordination standpoint. We need to go bigger for this. So trying to distinguish that difference. But yeah, collaboration with locals is a very important part of EDTV or Express Design Traffic Evaluation process as well. Yeah, thanks. Yes, Chris.
So all three presenters, or actually all four presenters, talked about the various products and the limitations and some of them that go with each one of them. It's great to see these disciplines being integrated like this. But, Joe he pointed out the Wikipedia definition was an attempt to estimate. And then he also pointed out informed roadway design. And so I wonder what the definition of informed roadway design in the real world application for traffic engineers and designers based upon each one of these products that are built upon, they build upon one another, come out with forecasts, do the analysis. How much of a factor of safety is there in forecast that goes into analysis to establish an intersection or interchange configuration? And what guidance is there for a traffic engineer and a designer to make decisions based upon the outcome, based upon those limitations for each product?
That's an outstanding point. Yeah, we do want to have a factor of safety, so to speak, as you mentioned in this. And you walk a fine line between being overly prescriptive versus wanting to rely on the best practices with your project team as you walk through it. But it's something that, where as we're looking for, well, first off, these conversations are occurring at multiple points. And so you want to have these conversations early on stage one, we'll have them stage two, and just that factor of safety is kind of tightening, so to speak, the further you go into it. And so we do have, I know TBD has good best practice manuals for forecasting, Joe Hummer and congestion management. They have good best practices as well. As well as we've just recently produced ones for EDTE. And so we're trying to make sure we have regular work group meetings on a monthly basis to be like, okay, how does, are we talking with this, and how can we improve these guidelines and make sure that we're providing that guidance that's needed for project development engineers to account for that factor of safety, so to speak. So, yeah, good job.
Can I add something back?
Oh, and by the way, it's 9:47. Last question. We'll finish this, but Joe, go on.
I was just going to say that's an excellent question. It's very easy for us. We do modeling, we do forecasting, but we don't do traffic operations or any of the analysis part. We shift off things to the next group, and then they carry it forward. And it's very easy to like work in silos if you do that. But we discovered a long time ago that, like Matt said, collaboration between the requester, who's requesting it, why they need it, and so forth, can help us, answer questions such as that. Because I don't have all the answers, obviously, but together we can work towards that goal. And by the time we shift it off to the next group, they're in a good position to take and say, oh, okay, this is the design we need to do. That's the safest, that's the most efficient, whatever. But we don't presume to dictate what that design is going to be.
And yeah, I did see at least one other hand raised. By all means, stay afterwards and we can answer your questions, but we'll make sure you get your break in. The break goes until 10:15, so be sure to be on time for your next session at 10:15. Oh, and sign in up front if you have not for your PDH credits. Sign in.
I like when he said, to quote Travis Marshall, looking for his, like, what is he going to say? I say a lot of stuff.